In the heart of the biblical story, a profound mystery awaits to be uncovered: the 12 tribes of Judah. Did you know that these tribes are not just ancient names, but represent legacies, struggles, and promises that echo to this day? Imagine an epic journey, where each tribe brings with it a rich history, filled with challenges and victories. Who were these people? What secrets do they keep? And how did their choices shape the destiny of an entire nation? As you dive into this fascinating universe, it's impossible not to be drawn in by the conflicts, alliances, and the deep relationship these tribes had with the Promised Land. And those symbols, those emblems that still reverberate in our culture today? What do they really mean? With each step, the story intertwines with spirituality, revealing timeless truths that can resonate in our lives. Get ready to explore not just the geography of these tribes, but also the lessons they teach us about faith, perseverance, and identity. Stay tuned, because each revelation promises to open new doors to a deeper understanding of what it means to be part of this rich heritage. Origin of the 12 tribes of Judah. The 12 tribes of Judah have a rich and fascinating origin, dating back to ancient times, specifically to the figure of Jacob. Jacob, also known as Israel, had 12 sons, each of whom became the founder of a tribe. The story begins with the alliances and family conflicts that marked the life of this patriarch. He married 2 sisters, Leah and Rachel, as well as their servants, Zilpah and Bilhah. This family arrangement resulted in a tangle of relationships and rivalries that shaped not only Jacob's life but also the identity of his tribes. Jacob's genealogy is filled with significant events. Each son represents not just a name, but also a legacy that would endure for generations. Reuben, the firstborn, was the first to pave the way for the formation of what would become a nation. Then came Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. Each of them carried the essence of their mother and the dream of their father, fulfilling the divine promise that Jacob would become a great nation. The stories of Jacob and his wives are filled with symbolism that reflects the struggle for leadership and the role of each tribe in the history of Israel. The rivalry between Leah and Rachel, for example, created a competitive environment that extended to their sons. Judah, one of Leah's sons, stood out among the others, and this had lasting implications for his descendants. The figure of Judah, in particular, would be crucial to the future of Israel, as he would become the most prominent tribe. Beyond family dynamics, the origin of the tribes is closely linked to the historical context of the time. Migration and the formation of clans and social groups were common, and the tribes of Judah were no exception. They settled in a territory that, according to tradition, was promised to them by God. This promise became a central aspect of Israelite identity, uniting the tribes under the banner of a divine origin. The origin of the 12 tribes of Judah is much more than a simple genealogy. It is a narrative that encompasses conflicts, alliances, and the search for identity. Each tribe carries in its name and history not only the weight of the past but also the hope for a future that would unfold in the pages of Israel's history. Meaning of the tribes' names. The names of the 12 tribes of Judah are not merely labels, they carry profound and revealing meanings about the identity and values of each group. Each name reflects characteristics or significant events in the lives of the patriarchs and their mothers. For example, the name Reuben means, "see, a son," reflecting Leah's joy at giving birth to her first son. This expression of joy demonstrates the importance of motherhood and the quest for approval in the family context. Simeon, whose name means, "to hear," reveals the story of Leah crying out for Jacob's attention. This name suggests an intimate connection with communication and listening, essential values in any society. Levi, which means joined or attached, symbolizes Leah's intention to connect more deeply with Jacob. Levi's name would also become significant in the formation of the priesthood, highlighting the spiritual importance of this tribe. Judah, perhaps the most significant name, means praise or thanksgiving. This name not only reflects Leah's gratitude but also foretells the central role the tribe of Judah would play in Israel's history. It is from this tribe that the royal lineage would come, culminating in the figure of David and, later, the Messianic tradition. The meaning of Judah's name encapsulates the essence of what it means to be part of a nation that seeks to acknowledge and honor its creator. The other names also have their stories. Dan, which means judge, is an allusion to the role of justice the tribe would play. Naphtali, meaning struggle or competition, reflects the tensions and challenges this tribe would face. Gad, meaning fortune, suggests a connection to prosperity and abundance. Each name, therefore, is not just a designation but a window into the aspirations, challenges, and legacies of each tribe. This analysis of the meaning of the tribe's names reveals a rich tapestry of stories and values that shape the identity of the people of Israel. These names are constant reminders of their origins and what each tribe represented, not only in terms of geography but also in terms of spirituality and culture. Geographical distribution of the tribes. The geographical distribution of the 12 tribes of Judah is a fascinating aspect of Israelite history, reflecting not only the heritage of the patriarchs but also the social and political organization of ancient Israel. After the conquest of Canaan, the tribes were assigned different regions, each with its geographical and cultural characteristics. This division was of great importance, as it defined not only where each tribe would settle but also how they would interact with each other. Judah, being the most prominent tribe, occupied a large area in the south, including Jerusalem, a central point in Israel's history. This tribe, with its strong leadership and influence, settled in a mountainous and fertile region that was conducive to both defense and agriculture. Judah's importance would become even more evident with the emergence of the Israelite monarchy when David became king and made Jerusalem his capital. In the north, the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh occupied fertile lands, ideally positioned for agriculture and livestock. Ephraim, in particular, became a powerful and influential tribe, often representing the northern kingdom after the division of Israel. The tribes of Zebulun and Issachar, farther northwest, also enjoyed productive lands but faced challenges with their Philistine and Canaanite neighbors. The tribes of Dan and Naphtali, located in the north, lived in mountainous and forested regions, providing both natural resources and strategic challenges. The location of these tribes was also significant, as they served as a defensive line against northern invasions. Geography thus played a crucial role in shaping tribal identity, influencing their ways of life and interactions with other tribes and nations. The tribes of Gad and Reuben, located east of the Jordan, occupied arid and mountainous lands that, while less fertile, were strategic for defending the Israelite territory. These areas served as a buffer against invasions from neighboring peoples, but also represented a challenge for establishing stable agriculture. The geographical distribution of the tribes, therefore, not only delineated the boundaries of their lands but also shaped their histories and legacies. Relationship with the patriarchs. The relationship of the 12 tribes of Judah with the patriarchs is a fundamental aspect of the biblical narrative that shaped Israelite identity. The patriarchs, such as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are central figures who established the foundations of faith and culture that would be passed down to future generations. The importance of these figures cannot be overstated, as their stories and legacies are intertwined with the origin of the tribes. Abraham, considered the father of nations, received the divine promise that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. This promise echoes throughout history, culminating in the 12 tribes that emerge from his lineage. Abraham's faith and willingness to follow God's will are characteristics that shaped the spirituality of the tribes, influencing their practices and beliefs. Isaac, Abraham's son, also played a crucial role in the continuity of this lineage. His life is marked by significant events, such as the near sacrifice by Abraham, which would become a symbol of faith and obedience to God. Isaac's relationship with his sons, Esau and Jacob, reveals the complex family dynamics that would influence the formation of the tribes. The fact that Jacob, later called Israel, received his father's blessing reinforces the idea that the chosen lineage was predestined to fulfill a divine purpose. Jacob, in turn, is the patriarch who truly gives rise to the 12 tribes. His interaction with each of his sons, his blessings, and even the family rivalries shaped the identity of each tribe. Jacob's story is marked by his struggles, both physical and spiritual, reflecting the struggle of the people of Israel throughout their history. The change of his name to Israel symbolizes the transformation and constant struggle for identity and the promise. Culture and religious practices. The 12 tribes of Judah were not just family groups with blood ties, they formed a rich cultural mosaic. Each tribe had its own traditions, customs, and religious practices that reflected the diversity of the Hebrew people. For example, the Israelites were known for their religious festivals, such as Passover, which celebrated the liberation from Egypt. Each tribe could have its own ways of observing these feasts, with variations that adapted to their local realities. Thus, the celebration of Passover could include specific elements of each tribe, showcasing the richness of their practices. Worshipping God was central to the life of the tribes. They followed the laws and commandments received through Moses, which formed the basis of religious and social life. The worship of Yahweh, the Hebrew God, involved sacrifices and rituals performed in sacred places like the tabernacle. Each tribe had specific responsibilities during these ceremonies, reinforcing the idea that they were all integral parts of a greater whole. Additionally, the presence of priests and Levites, who were responsible for conducting the rituals, also reflected the importance of religiosity in tribal culture. Religious practices were not limited to festivities. Prayer and the study of the scriptures were daily activities. The tribes valued the oral transmission of traditions and stories, which were passed down from generation to generation. This promoted a sense of identity and community. The stories of the patriarchs and the great deeds of God were retold in homes, at family gatherings, and in synagogues, linking the tribes to their past and strengthening the people's faith. The observance of the Sabbath, the day of rest, was also a common practice, reflecting a fundamental principle of Hebrew religious life. Each tribe respected this tradition, which was a constant reminder of creation and the special relationship between God and his people. During the Sabbath, families gathered to pray, study, and share meals, strengthening family and tribal bonds. Culinary traditions, which could vary from tribe to tribe, were also a way of expressing the culture and identity of each group. The religious practices of the 12 tribes of Judah were therefore not just formal rituals but a way of life that involved the entire community. They intertwined with the culture, identity, and history of each tribe, creating a rich tapestry that shaped the life of the Hebrew people. This religious and cultural diversity helped to form a collective identity while allowing for the individuality of each tribe. Rivalries and alliances. The dynamics between the 12 tribes of Judah were complex and often marked by rivalries and alliances. From the time of their formation, internal conflicts and territorial disputes were frequent. The most notable rivalry occurred between the tribes of Judah and Ephraim. Judah, being the most influential tribe, often found itself at odds with Ephraim, which also sought a prominent role. This tension often resulted in wars and divisions, reflecting the struggle for power and the quest for leadership among the Israelites. However, not all interactions were hostile. On several occasions, the tribes united to face external enemies. The biblical story is full of examples of different tribes coming together in battle, such as in the conquest of Canaan. This cooperation was crucial for the survival of the Hebrew people in an environment full of threats, where unity proved more effective than division. The alliances formed in these situations not only strengthened the tribes but also promoted a sense of collective identity. The alliance between the tribes was also evident in moments of celebration and festivities. During harvests, for example, the tribes often gathered to share the fruits of labor and celebrate the blessings received. These social interactions helped to ease rivalries and promote bonds of friendship and solidarity. Thus, the rivalries and alliances between the tribes were an essential part of social and political life, reflecting the complexity of human relationships. The period of the Judges, which followed the conquest of Canaan, is a clear example of how rivalries and alliances shaped the tribe's history. During this time, the tribes often fought among themselves, but they also united under the leadership of judges to face common enemies, such as the Philistines. The narratives of this period show how the tribes could be both rivals and allies, depending on the circumstances. This duality was an integral part of tribal experience, reflecting the dynamics of power and the struggle for survival. The rivalries and alliances between the 12 tribes of Judah were essential to understanding the history and culture of the Hebrew people. These interactions shaped the identity of the tribes and influenced significant events over time. The struggle for power and the need for cooperation created a rich and complex tapestry, marked by conflicts but also by moments of unity and solidarity. The role of the tribes in Israel's history. The 12 tribes of Judah played a fundamental role in Israel's history, influencing significant events that shaped the trajectory of the Hebrew people. From the conquest of Canaan, where each tribe received its portion of land, to the formation of the unified monarchy under Saul, David, and Solomon, the tribes were at the center of decisions and historical events. The conquest of Canaan itself was a milestone, where the tribes united to expel the Canaanite peoples and establish their dwellings. This conquest not only defined the territory that each tribe would occupy but also solidified the national identity of the Israelites. As history progressed, the tribes continued to influence the politics and culture of Israel. During the period of the Judges, leadership was decentralized, and the tribes often made individual decisions on how to deal with external threats. This tribal structure allowed for some autonomy but also generated internal conflicts. The stories of judges like Deborah and Gideon show how leaders from different tribes could unite in times of crisis, demonstrating the importance of collaboration between the tribes for the defense of the Hebrew people. With the rise of the monarchy, the role of the tribes changed. Unification under a single king brought challenges and opportunities. The tribe of Judah, in particular, gained prominence, especially with the rise of David, who was from the line of Judah. David not only unified the tribes but also established Jerusalem as the capital, a crucial step that united the tribes under a central government. However, this centralization also generated resentment, especially among the northern tribes, leading to tensions that culminated in the division of the kingdom after Solomon's death. The division of the kingdom into Israel, north, and Judah, south, was one of the most significant events in the history of the tribes. The northern tribes rebelled against Judah's leadership, leading to the creation of a separate kingdom. This division had lasting implications, with rivalries between the tribes intensifying over time. The kingdom of Israel faced a series of invasions and eventual destruction, while Judah managed to survive longer. This history illustrates how tribal rivalries could influence the destiny of the entire nation. The role of the tribes in Israel's history was not limited to political events but also extended to social and cultural aspects. The tribes contributed to the formation of Hebrew identity, each bringing its traditions and practices. Even after the fall of the kingdom of Judah and the Babylonian exile, the memories and legacies of the tribes continued to influence Jewish culture. The stories of their origins and collective experiences persist to this day, showing how the role of the tribes shaped the history and identity of the Hebrew people. Exile and dispersion. The Babylonian exile was one of the most traumatic events in the history of the 12 tribes of Judah, marking a turning point that profoundly affected the identity and social structure of the Hebrew people. In 586 BC, after the conquest of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, many Israelites were taken captive to Babylon. This exile not only resulted in the loss of land and autonomy but also in an identity crisis for the tribes. The forced separation from their ancestral lands and the imposition of a foreign culture presented immense challenges to the preservation of their traditions and beliefs. During the exile, the tribes faced the need to adapt to a new environment. Religious practice became an even more crucial aspect of daily life as the Israelites sought to maintain their identity amidst cultural assimilation. Synagogues became centers of worship and learning, where the traditions and stories of the tribes were retold. Symbols and emblems of the tribes. Each of the 12 tribes of Judah had its own symbol or emblem, often associated with specific characteristics or foundational myths. For example, the tribe of Judah is frequently represented by a lion, symbolizing strength and leadership, reflecting its prominent position among the tribes. The lion, which is also a central figure in various biblical narratives, encapsulates the idea of royalty and courage, attributes that were fundamental to the Jewish identity, especially in times of conflict and uncertainty. The tribe of Reuben, on the other hand, is symbolized by a man, which, according to tradition, represents the birthright and the strength of leadership. These emblems were not merely artistic but also served as a form of identification and cohesion among tribe members. The use of symbols helped strengthen communal bonds and remind everyone of the heritage and responsibilities that each tribe carried. The emblems were also linked to historical events and specific narratives. For example, the tribe of Ephraim is often represented by a young ox, symbolizing vigor and fertility. The choice of this symbol can be seen as an allusion to the growth and prosperity that the tribe experienced during the conquest of Canaan. These visual representations contributed to a collective memory that united the tribe members around a common story. Additionally, the symbolism of the tribes was used in various ceremonies and religious festivities. The emblems were often displayed on flags and banners, especially during movements and battles. This practice not only solidified tribal identity but also served as a visual reminder of the promises God made to each of the tribes, reinforcing the idea that they were chosen to fulfill a divine purpose. The symbolism of the tribes extended beyond the historical context; it spread into literature and art throughout the centuries. The emblems were reinterpreted in various cultural traditions, from medieval to contemporary art, showing that the influence of the 12 tribes still resonates in modern culture. The study of these symbols helps us understand not only tribal identity but also how this identity evolved and adapted over time. Prophecies related to the tribes. The biblical prophecies that mention the tribes of Judah are rich in meaning and interpretations. They not only provide insight into the future of the tribes but also reflect the hopes and anxieties of the communities that received them. For example, Jacob's prophecy in Genesis 49 details the fate of each of the tribes, offering a vision of how they would be viewed in future generations. This passage is often cited in theological studies, as it is one of the oldest texts that mention the tribes prophetically. The prophecy of Judah, in particular, is one of the most significant, as it speaks about the tribe's ascendance and leadership. The phrase, "the scepter will not depart from Judah," suggests that this tribe would play a central role in the Israelite monarchy, which indeed materialized with the rise of David's dynasty. This connection between prophecy and history is a recurring theme in biblical literature, where divine promises are often associated with historical fulfillment. Furthermore, other prophecies, such as those found in Ezekiel and Isaiah, address the future of Israel as a whole, including the tribes. These texts speak of the restoration and reunification of the tribes after exile, emphasizing the hope for spiritual and territorial renewal. Ezekiel's visions, for example, project an era when the tribes will reunite, reflecting a desire for unity and reconciliation among the different groups that make up the people of Israel. Interpretations of these prophecies vary, especially among different religious traditions. In Christianity, many of these passages are seen as prefigurations of the coming of Jesus, while in Judaism, they are often understood as promises of restoration and redemption. This diversity of interpretations shows how prophecies can serve different communities and contexts throughout history. The relevance of these prophecies extends beyond the historical and religious context. They continue to inspire discussions about identity, belonging, and hope in contemporary communities that identify as descendants of the 12 tribes. The study of these prophecies leads to a deeper understanding of human aspirations and the search for meaning in a collective history that still resonates today. Relationship with neighboring nations. The interactions between the tribes of Judah and the neighboring nations were complex and multifaceted, reflecting both conflicts and collaborations. Since the time of Abraham, relations with peoples such as the Canaanites, Moabites, and Philistines played a fundamental role in shaping Israelite identity. These interactions were often marked by tensions, especially when it came to territorial and worship issues, but there were also moments of cultural and commercial exchange. A notable example is the relationship between Israel and Egypt. During the narrative of the Exodus, the Israelites, who considered themselves descendants of the tribes of Judah, faced oppression under Egyptian rule. However, before this period of slavery, Egypt was seen as a place of refuge, especially during the famine that affected the land of Canaan. This duality in the relationship, of refuge and oppression, illustrates how the Israelites navigated their interactions with the powerful nations of the time. Furthermore, alliances with neighboring nations, such as Philistia and Moab, were also significant. On some occasions, these alliances were established to face common enemies, while in others, the Israelites engaged in mixed marriages or trade agreements. The story of Ruth, who was a Moabite, exemplifies how the tribes could form family and social ties with neighboring peoples, contributing to a rich and varied cultural dynamic. However, tensions often outweighed alliances. The wars with the Philistines, for example, were a constant in Israel's history, leading to emblematic battles such as David's fight against Goliath. These rivalries shaped the narrative of resistance and identity of the Israelites, consolidating the idea that they were a chosen people, who needed to fight for their land and their faith. Today, the legacy of these interactions can still be felt in the relations between Israel and its neighbors. The study of the tribes of Judah and their historical interactions provides a foundation for understanding the complexity of current geopolitical relations, where issues of identity, territory, and culture continue to influence regional dynamics. The history of the tribes is a powerful reminder of how the past shapes the present and the importance of seeking mutual understanding amid a legacy of conflict. Representation in Scripture. The 12 tribes of Judah have a rich and multifaceted representation in Jewish and Christian scriptures, and this representation is essential for understanding the history and theology of both testaments. In the Old Testament, the tribes are often mentioned in contexts ranging from the narrative of the conquest of Canaan to the time of the judges and the monarchy. The references to each tribe help form a cohesive picture of Israelite society, where each tribe had its role and importance. A notable example is the territorial distribution of the tribes in Joshua, which describes how the promised land was divided among them. This account not only delineates geographical boundaries but also reflects the social and political dynamics of the time. The tribes were seen as autonomous entities, each with its own leader and territory, but at the same time, all united under the leadership of figures like Moses and Joshua. This duality is a recurring theme in Scripture, where tribal individuality is balanced by the idea of a single people. The tribes also appear in prophecies and genealogies, which are often used to legitimize leadership and heritage. In 1 Chronicles, for example, genealogies are detailed to reaffirm the importance of the tribes in the history of the people of Israel. These lists are not merely a matter of record but serve to reinforce the identity and continuity of the tribes throughout generations. They are also significant for understanding the theology of election, where God chooses a specific people to fulfill his promises. In the New Testament, the representation of the tribes changes somewhat, reflecting the new understanding of God's people. Although the tribes are still mentioned, as in the lists in the book of Revelation, the emphasis shifts to the idea that inclusion in God's people is no longer limited to a specific lineage but open to all who believe. This transition is fundamental to understanding the Christian message, which seeks to integrate both. And so, as we delve into the history of the 12 tribes of Judah, we are reminded of how these lineages shaped not only Israel's history but that of all humanity. Each tribe, with its unique characteristics and legacies, teaches us valuable lessons about faith, perseverance, and identity. But have you ever stopped to think about how these ancient stories connect with your life today? The tribes faced enormous challenges, but they always found ways to rise again. This makes us reflect: do we have the same determination when facing today's difficulties? Moreover, how can we apply the teachings of these tribes in our daily lives, in our communities? Here's the question: if you could choose one tribe to connect with more deeply, which would it be? And what would that say about you? Don't forget to share your reflections and insights in the comments. Before we wrap up, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the 12 tribes of Judah, be sure to check out our other videos, where we explore more about the rich biblical history. After all, each story is a fundamental piece in building our faith and knowledge.